I'm Nancy, a 32-year-old. I'm a video editor working from home. Last year, we built a house and now I live with my husband, our daughter, and also my Mill and Sil. Initially, this house was meant for just our family, but after my Phil passed away, it ended up being the home for the 5 of us. My husband Thomas and I met through a friend's introduction. After work, I went out for drinks with 2 colleagues, and when we got to our table, there were 3 guys sitting there. What? I thought it was just the 3 of us drinking. I whispered to my colleagues, who just smirked back at me. Yes, I had been duped. I thought it was just a small gathering, but it turned out to be a blind date. I'm not really into blind dates. I had been asked several times before by these 2, but always declined, never having attended one. However, worried that I'd never find a boyfriend, they set up this blind date without telling me. For my sake, they explained. I suspected they just wanted to go on a blind date themselves. Most of the participants seemed used to this kind of setting, and as soon as we sat down, the small talk began. After ordering drinks, we each did a brief self-introduction. I wasn't keen, but didn't want to spoil the mood, so I introduced myself with a big smile. This surprised my colleagues a bit. I'm usually quite nervous, often stumbling over my words, or forgetting what to say next during presentations at work. So, my full smile introduction was indeed a shocker for them. But that was my peak. Afterward, I had no idea what to talk about with strangers, and keeping up the conversation while being polite was exhausting. I found an excuse to go to the restroom, and once outside, I just had to get out of the bar. I like bars but can't stand the smell of smoke. Craving some fresh air, I stepped outside, bought a soda from a vending machine, and gulped it down in front of the store. The blind dates are tough. I understand you. Huh. Surprised at hearing a familiar voice, when I thought I was alone, I turned towards the source of the sound. Then, there stood one of the guys from that day's blind date. It was Thomas. Turns out, he also disliked blind dates and had been dragged there by a colleague, already wanting to leave. It didn't take long for us 2 like-minded souls to click. That night, we exchanged numbers and promised to meet again, but this time in a non-smoking place. We kept our promise, and after repeating the cycle of meeting up and then planning the next date, we eventually fell for each other and started dating. Around that time, I was considering going freelance, and Thomas was a great support as I navigated leaving my job. Thomas was very supportive, helping me think through the independence process and cheering me on. With Thomas's support, I quit my job. I started my own video editing business from home after going independent. 6 months into my new venture, Thomas proposed, and we decided to get married. We lived peacefully for a while, but a year into our marriage, my Phil collapsed while at work and never came back. The sudden loss shocked and grieved the family, but my Mill and Sil were the only ones who didn't shed a tear. What are we going to do about our living situation now Dad's gone? Well, there's nothing we can do about someone who's already passed away, right? I absolutely don't want to work, you know. The conversations between my Mill and Sil were always about themselves. Since getting married, my Mill had lived as a homemaker, spending her days managing the household and attending cooking classes or hula dancing classes, leading a life where she didn't need to work but could still enjoy her hobbies, though not exactly living the high life. And Sil, after graduating college, had never held a job, sustaining herself on part-time work a few times a week. They were totally living off their parents. Following my FIL's death, rather than mourning, they were consumed with concern for their own futures, talking about money during the funeral arrangements and the meals after the wake. Some relatives whispered about them, likely noting that even before this, the 2 of them cared more about money than anything else. As a DIL, I planned to keep my distance from them. However, my intention was naive. The year after my Phil passed away, I gave birth to a lively baby girl. Her arrival motivated Thomas and me to decide on building a house. We found a scenic plot on a hill, and though not very large, the house had space for my home office. Spending my days sending Thomas off to work and being with our 1-year-old daughter, Lily, was idyllic. I worked while Lily napped and spent relaxed days sunbathing or going for walks with her when she woke. Despite her frequent night awakenings causing some sleep-deprived nights, watching Lily grow each day was a joy. Yet, that peaceful time was taken away by my Mill and Sil. After living off insurance money for a while without reducing their lifestyle, they blew through it in 2 years, indulging even more than before as if the money was endless. Eventually, having to give up their own house, they moved into ours. Our house wasn't big, so the only available room was the guest room, and we couldn't just kick them out. However, Sil complained about sharing a room, and Mill demanded a room for each of them. Thomas got angry at their selfishness, leading to an argument. Thinking this could lead to trouble, I cut through the argument by offering, "I'll clear out my workspace for you to use." Sil smugly responded, "That's more like it. You should have said that from the start," and ordered me to hurry and clear the room. It was already past 10 p.m., and fearing another argument, I quickly cleared out my office. Moving the computer was a hassle, but I managed to move everything to the bedroom before midnight, and we all went to sleep in our respective rooms. The next day, Thomas was off work, and Lily slept in, allowing us a rare chance for a leisurely morning. Just as we thought about having brunch, there was a knock. "Nancy, are you still asleep? I'm hungry. Can you make breakfast quickly?" It was Sil. Being careful not to wake Lily, I went downstairs and found my Mill standing behind my Sil. "Sorry, Lily and Thomas are still asleep. Could you please keep it down?" "What? Their sleep is more important than our breakfast." My Sil is 35 years old. I wanted to tell her if she was hungry, she could make her own meal, but since I work from home, I wanted to avoid any tension within the house, because a tense atmosphere affects my work. So, I bit my tongue and headed to the kitchen, silently. While I prepared breakfast, they didn't lift a finger to help. Instead, Sil said, "Hey, I want to have breakfast on the terrace. Can you set that up?" Mistaking our place for some resort hotel, my Sil demanded the terrace be set up with tables and chairs that hadn't been put out yet. Losing my patience, I calmly said, "Sorry, I can't set up alone, so let's save the terrace breakfast for another time," and continued with the meal prep. Sil yelled, "Who do you think you are, not listening to me?" Unbelievable. Her shouting woke Lily, who started crying from upstairs. I stopped making breakfast and went to soothe Lily. Then Thomas woke up, and the moment I saw his face, I couldn't stop crying. The thought of living with those two made just half a day together unbearable. Perhaps sensing my feelings, Thomas kept apologizing to me. It wasn't Thomas's fault. If anything, he was trying to protect our family, and I didn't blame him at all. My tears must have surprised Lily, as she started crying louder than she had in the morning. After calming Lily down a bit, I went downstairs to find that the breakfast I had been making was already eaten, and the dishes were messily piled up in the sink. I was stunned by the scene, but showing my distress would only worry Thomas. I pretended to be calm and started making breakfast for Thomas and Lily as usual. My Mill came to the kitchen to get some tea and said to me as she passed by, "This house is so noisy. Can't you keep it down a bit?" I looked at Mill, but she acted as if nothing had happened, pouring herself some tea. After a week of trying not to upset my Mill and Sil, bending to their every whim, a comment from my Mill made me realize I was wrong. This is our house. There's no need to tiptoe around them. One day, while I was working and letting Lily play in the bedroom, I finally managed to get some work done, which I hadn't been able to do for the past week. Lily can play by herself for about 30 minutes at a time, and I was desperately trying to work during those brief periods. Though sending her to daycare was an option, I didn't want to miss any moment of her rapidly growing up, so I decided to stay home with her. While I was focused on my work in my valuable 30 minutes, my Sil came into the room, saying, "Hey, we're out of shampoo. I want to wash my hair this morning, so could you go buy some right now?" Morning hair wash. It was already past noon. I was in the middle of work and couldn't leave. I asked her to buy it herself if she needed it, but she complained for a good half hour, and I couldn't get any work done. Lily, perhaps thinking my Sil was odd, just stared at her blankly. Lily, usually very sociable, somehow knows to keep away from my Mill and Sil. It seems like children can instinctively sense when someone might be harmful to them. I continued to ignore my Sil, who refused to buy her own shampoo. "Nancy, you've got some nerve, ignoring me. I don't care if you work from home or whatever, but Neet's like you should get out." She started a long-winded rant about how, because this house belonged to her younger brother, she, being older, had the right to make decisions in the household. Hearing my SIL's shrill voice, my mill also came over. And my mill agreed, saying, "Yes, she's right. You should leave soon." "Understood." I replied emotionlessly, suppressing my anger at being told to leave my own house by these people. I decided to leave the house with my daughter and our dog. As I was packing, my mill and Sil came to check on me, smirking. It was as if they were delighted I was leaving, thinking they could continue to live here without making any effort. I explained the situation to Thomas, and we left the house. Sometime later, I got a message from my Sil. "Why are we being evicted? Thomas keeps saying he knows nothing about it." I told her, "It means exactly what it says. That house was in my name. I decided to sell it, using my authority as the owner. Yours. The house we built was indeed in my name. I had been successful in my business, growing to the point of hiring employees within 6 months. My company, mainly focusing on video editing, allows everyone except for the salespeople to work from home, making it possible to work from anywhere in the country. And Thomas, handling sales, has been bringing in various projects. I'm the CEO, and Thomas is an employee. Since it was easier to get a loan under my name, we put the house under my name, and I was the one making the payments. Given that my job could be done from anywhere, and I wanted to expand our market overseas, Thomas and I had been planning to move abroad. We intended to keep our previous house as a vacation home. However, after dealing with my mill and SIL's selfish behavior, we decided against continuing to pay for people like them, and chose to sell the house. When I explained this to my Sil, she suddenly changed her attitude. "Abroad? I'm coming too. Which country are we going to?" There was no way we were taking her with us. "I'm sorry, but please do not contact us anymore. It's a nuisance." I didn't answer her question and just hung up the phone. She tried to contact us many times after that, but I continued to ignore her. In fact, Thomas had moved in with us a little before the eviction notice was sent to my mill and Sil. A month later, on the eviction date, I heard that my mill and Sil finally left the house. They waited until the last minute but were repeatedly warned by the lawyer I hired, so they had no choice but to leave. From what I heard through relatives, after leaving the house, they lived off my mill's pension for a while. However, living on one person's pension wasn't enough, and they clashed over money issues, eventually living separately. My mill, who had been living comfortably and selfishly until then, started working part-time for the first time in her life. However, she's constantly in trouble at work for not reflecting on her actions, and she's on the verge of getting fired. My Sil, misunderstanding that working from home means easy money, spent her last dime on a computer and waited 2 months for work to magically appear. Working from home isn't easy. It's work, after all, and it's supposed to be challenging. Moreover, if you plan to work as a freelancer, building a trustworthy relationship with clients is crucial. I can hardly imagine my self-centered Sil being suitable for such work. Eventually, unable to find any work, she started working part-time at a convenience store. Choosing part-time work instead of a steady job just before turning 40, my Sil is indeed an odd one. As for us, we moved our business base to Canada and have grown into a company that handles both domestic and international projects. Lily is happily attending kindergarten in Canada. I'm really glad we could live away from my mill and Sil, but I've also learned that there are many different kinds of people in the world thanks to them. I want to use this learning in my work, further developing my ability to assess people.